everyone, welcome back to another episode on my YouTube channel. I took a couple-month break over the summer, but I'm happy to be back with some new YouTube content for y'all. I am Hillary Mulick, a North Carolina wedding photographer, and today's topic is all about second shooting, just tips on how to be the best second shooter you can be. I think second shooting is a great opportunity when you're trying to build portfolio, and it's also a great opportunity to be able to see another photographer in what they do in their wedding business, what they do on the wedding day behind the scenes, and to be able to talk with them and get some insight into how they handle different situations on a wedding day. So being a second shooter is awesome. And so on today's video, I wanted to talk through some things that you can do as a second shooter that would be super helpful to the primary shooter. So the first tip as a second shooter is make sure you're following the primary shooter's lead. What I mean by this is ask them what they need done and go and do it. I've had some instances in the past where, I've been doing bride and groom portraits and I've asked my second shooter to go cover cocktail hour because I'm not able to be there, and they kind of grumbled about it because they wanted to be there with me doing bride and groom portraits. So obviously bride and groom portraits are really fun and you get some really great images out of it, but what I really need from a second shooter is for them to be able to capture things that I'm not able to capture. So good tip on a wedding day is to follow the primary shooter's lead, ask them what they need done, and do it without complaint. By doing this, you'll make your primary photographer really happy. They'll be more willing to work with you again in the future and recommend you to other photographers as well, which is really awesome. The second thing is make sure as a second shooter, you're not standing around and doing nothing if you're not sure what to do. There might be parts in the wedding day where the primary shooter is busy and you're not able to check in with them and ask them what they need from you at that moment. And I think the worst thing you can do is just stand in a corner and do nothing and be in the way. What you can do during these times is take advantage of taking behind the scenes photos, doing detail shots, doing candid photos of guests talking and mingling and wedding party mingling. I think these are really great filler photos that I love using from my second shooter's images. So those are just some things you can do instead of standing around if you're not really sure what to do at the moment. The next thing you can do, and I just mentioned this, is taking behind the scenes photos. I love it when my second shooters take behind the scenes photos. I think that there are some parts of the day where the second shooter maybe isn't really able to get another angle of something. So let's say there's a primary photographer and a videographer team, and there's just lots of people photographing something at the same moment, and it's just not, it's like too many cooks in the kitchen for you as a second shooter to try and get in there and get a similar photo. So in this instance, it would be a great opportunity to take behind the scenes photos. So just back up and get a picture of the scene. I love seeing these images in my second shooters when I'm going through my second shooter images, just to see behind the scenes photos popping up. I love editing them and putting them on my social media. And then of course I tag my second shooters in those as well. I just really love those pictures, and I think it's a great thing to do as a second shooter when you're not able to get an angle in a certain moment. The next tip as a second shooter is make sure you're being creative with your photos. Don't just stand over the primary photographer's shoulder and capture the same exact shot that they're getting, because that's not helpful. I don't want to go through my images and go through my second shooter's images and feel like they were just getting the same stuff I was getting. So of course I'm going to prioritize my images, and then I'm not going to end up using as many of theirs because we're basically getting the same shot as I was. Now, of course, if a primary shooter wants you to do this, I know some photographers who shoot film, and as they're shooting film, they like their second shooters to be shooting digital over their shoulder as just kind of a backup. So unless you're asked to do that, I would not. Don't just on your own go behind the primary shooter and just photograph the same exact things that they are photographing. Get a little bit creative, put on a different lens. I love when my second shooters put on a more zoom lens or a close-up lens and just get closer up details, closer up moments of things that are happening. Whereas, I'm getting the big picture, my second shooter is getting an angled shot of like a moment that's happening between a groom and a groomsman, or just like a really nice detail. I think those are really beautiful images that I love including in the final galleries of my bride and grooms. The next thing you can do is make sure you have a copy of the timeline on hand, whether it's a printed copy or a copy on your phone, and familiarize yourself with it before the wedding day. As a photographer myself, I make it a practice to get on the phone with all of my second shooters about a week before the wedding day and talk through the timeline and talk through everything that I'm going to be doing, everything I want them to be doing. But it's even more impressive when the wedding day comes and they have a copy, either physical or on their phone, of the timeline, and they have familiarize themselves with it so that I'm not having to constantly remind them of things that are going on throughout the wedding day. So I think it's really great for them to take the extra mile and familiarize themselves with the timeline. And so that's a tip that you can do as a second shooter. A couple other things I wanted to mention that are more along the lines of going the extra mile on a wedding day is holding equipment for your primary shooter. Sometimes I have extra film equipment, extra styling equipment, and it's always super helpful when my second shooter is there ready to lend a helping hand whenever I need it. So that's something that you can offer as well. During family photos, it's great for a second shooter to have the family photo list and be able to call these names out so that the primary shooter doesn't have to worry about that. They can just worry about taking the photos, and then you as a second shooter can have the list and get all the groupings ready and on standby so that family photos go really smoothly. Another thing that I love when my second shooters do is just checking in with me as the primary, making sure I'm hydrated, asking me if I have water, if they need to go get water for me, or if during the reception I need a soda or something to replenish my strength, because it's been a really long wedding day, and especially shooting weddings here in the South, most weddings are on really hot days. So I love when my second shooters go the extra mile and ask me if I'm hydrated and if they can get me some water. This was kind of mentioned earlier as just an option of something you can do when rather than standing around, but I love candid photos. I think candid photos are a great thing for second shooters to get throughout the day, especially when me as a primary shooter, I am more focused on getting the things that the bride and groom want and getting more of the traditional photos of the wedding party and the portraits and that kind of stuff. So I'm not able to get as many just like fun guest candids, and I love when my second shooters can do that. So that's another way that you can go the extra mile, is by capturing candid photos of the guests throughout the day. And those are all my tips for second shooters. Hopefully you're able to take these things and apply them into your own business, apply them on your next second shooting gig, and let me know how it goes. Don't forget, I have a free download. There is a link down in the description of how to get 10 storytelling images with just one pose. It's a really great guide in how I pose my couples less, and I'm able to get more of a variety by posing them less. So make sure to download that guide. It's how to get 10 storytelling images with one pose. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you again next week with another YouTube episode. Bye.